Clicking on this video means you are making a fantastic choice. You want to learn how to play one of the most iconic horror characters of all time. He's a fantastic starting killer for Dead by Daylight. He's easy to understand as of right now. He's quite a strong killer as well. There are lots of nuances that will elevate a good Myers into a great Myers. This guide will help you up those stairs. Right before we climb those stairs though, a special thank you to my tier 3 YouTube members, very much appreciated. I've been playing the Michael Myers character since May of 2018 and have quite a bit of experience with him. I have over 8,000 hours of experience in DBD. It's most likely more than that. It's spread across quite a few platforms, but we're going to play it safe. The majority of my playtime does go into playing Michael. We're going to be separating the Myers guide into chunks. You can skip to any specific section you need through timestamps. There should be a pinned comment going over all the specific categories we're covering in this guide. Let's start with a very basic introduction to how Michael Myers works. Myers has access to 3 different modes that he can access. These 3 modes are Pursuer mode, Stalker mode, and Evil Incarnate. At the beginning of a match, Myers can only access Stalker and Pursuer mode. He can switch between these 2 modes at the click of a button, the prompt being unique to whatever you're playing on. In order to access Evil Incarnate mode, Myers has to stalk, so let's get into how that works. For starters, stalking can only be done in Stalker mode, which is what Myers will always begin the match starting as. In Stalker mode, Myers has no terror radius or red stain. A terror radius is just spooky music that plays for survivors when the killer is within their vicinity. As just previously mentioned, in Stalker mode, Myers has absolutely 0 terror radius, meaning it's very easy to sneak up on survivors in this mode. Just be aware that Myers does have heavy breathing, footsteps, and is quite tall. Maneuver around the environment accordingly. As for the red stain, in front of every killer they give off a red stain, showing the survivor which way the killer is looking. Myers doesn't give this in Stalker mode. This can result in some very fun mind games that can be done mid-chase with the survivor.
Oh well. Yep, that's that no terror radius stuff with the new Myers.
Some very clever things can be done to really mix them up. Chasing them with Pursuer mode and then cutting off line of sight with Stalker mode and coming up from a completely different angle can really mess them up. This isn't something I would recommend doing often, but the occasional mix-up can get you a hit. Other things to note about Stalker mode, while Myers is completely undetectable, he's also quite a bit slower, moving at 105% movement speed. This is 10% slower than average killer movement speeds, so he's not going to be making ground with this mode at all. You want to use this mode when you know survivors are close by, or of course, when you need to stalk. To stalk, you'll hit whatever the power button is for your console. Look at a survivor and your evil meter will begin to fill up. Do be aware, once the meter hits the halfway point, the survivor you're currently looking at will be alerted of your presence playing this spooky piece of music. Remember that only they will hear the sound notification, and it will only play once passing the halfway point. This can be used to our advantage. We'll get into that later. Once Myers stalks enough to get his meter fully charged up, another sound effect will play. This one can be heard from every survivor on the board, and they now know you have your power. Now you might be thinking, well, I can just stalk until the 99 point and then sneak up on someone without giving them the noise prompt. While a smart idea, keep in mind that you only have 20 seconds. Once the 20 seconds pass, the power will be reset to the halfway marker. And once it gets reset to the halfway marker, the next person that is stalked will hear the music cue, telling them they're being stalked. Now, just because there's a 20-second limit, that doesn't mean we cannot do this strategy. 99ing and sneaking up on someone is completely legitimate and one of the strongest things Myers can do. However, you have to plan ahead of time. You have to have a target in mind. So if you stalk a survivor over here, and you know someone is like in the main building, for example, you can 99 the stalk, rush over to the main building, finish the stalk, and before they know it, they're dead.
Well, that's a prime stalking spot, so we're absolutely going to take advantage of that. We block her safety, and down she goes.
Once Michael's stock is fully charged, he will now have a button prompt to enter Evil Incarnate. He will also be fully stuck in Pursuer mode once he has a full meter of stock until he uses Evil Incarnate. Once Evil Incarnate's timer runs out, Myers will return to Stalker mode and have it accessible to him once again. Pursuer mode for Myers can be accessed at any time, similar to Stalker mode. At the click of a button, Myers can go from being a silent stalker to a relentless pursuer. Myers gains a 16 meter tear radius, 115% movement speed, a 20% longer lunge, 20% faster pallet breaking speed, 20% pallet enduring, and 20% faster vaulting speed. This mode is good at forcing pallets down and getting hits in. I find the best use of Pursuer mode is when directly coming out of Stalker mode, sneaking up on survivors and forcing them to make quick decisions, either giving you a pallet or taking a hit. This mode becomes far more deadly if survivors decide not to heal against Myers, since this means instead of just a simple injury, they'll receive a down. Pursuer is much more straightforward than Stalker mode. If there is one thing I would really say to keep in mind with Pursuer mode is the extra lunge. The amount of times the additional lunge has caught survivors off guard, for me, is not a small number. It's helped me out a ton. We'll be discussing more in depth on how to use Pursuer with Stalker mode later. The most fun mode for Myers, and Myers at his most powerful. He retains the 20% vault, enduring, pallet breaking speed, and red stain. He gains a 32 meter tear radius, which is the same as a normal killer. Evil Incarnate at base kit is 60 seconds and takes 5 seconds of stalking when Myers is holding still. He does not keep the longer lunge that Pursuer mode gets. Instead, he gets a new attack called Slaughtering Strike. Slaughtering Strike is a chargeable lunge that will insta-down survivors, meaning if they're healthy, they'll be put into the dying state when hit by this. The more the lunge is held down, the farther the attack will go. Without add-ons, this attack can be used to mind game shorter loops, but much longer ones, and the attack won't be able to reach the survivor. Oftentimes when charging the attack, survivors will simply leave the loop. Be aware of what survivors stick to play the loop and which don't. Those that don't can be punished for leaving and will often result in a very easy down. You don't have to commit to the lunge immediately. You can hold the attack for a moment and just wait for a survivor to do something. Another thing to keep in mind before Evil Incarnate ends, you can actually hold the lunge for a little bit before Slaughtering Strike ends to extend the time you get with your insta-down attack. To ensure you get a hit, pay attention to what side the survivor is gravitating towards. Quickly walk in that direction for a moment and let the lunge go to get a hit. The camera behaves exactly like a normal lunge does, so it isn't too difficult to get hits with the attack. Be aware of taller loops, as these loops are mostly guesswork as to where the survivor is going to go. If the survivor typically likes to leave loops a bit more, keep that in mind when trying to mind game with this attack around these taller loops. When it comes to longer loops, there's not much you can do other than brute force the pallets down, bum rushing to the pallet and then breaking the pallet, which is something Slaughtering Strike can be used for. Use the attack on a pallet and it will break it right down. When doing this, Myers will slow down for a moment and will be unable to attack for a moment of time. Slaughtering Strike is excellent in pressuring pallets. Simply charge it at a pallet and the survivor is forced to drop it. If they decide to get greedy, they go down. Slaughtering Strike has a 4-second cooldown, so if you miss the survivor, they will have enough time to quickly scatter to a pallet or window if there's one nearby. When chasing a survivor around a shore loop, sometimes it's best to actually bait breaking the pallet, but then go around and hit the survivor with the Slaughter Strike. Remember, clearing pallets is great, but getting downs is better. Evil Incarnate is fantastic at clearing out pallets insanely quickly and turning the tides of battle. This is Myers at his most terrifying, and he gets even scarier once the survivor is on death hook. Once on death hook, Myers has the ability to mori survivors. This gives Myers quite a bit of power. When right next to a survivor on death hook, you will see a kill prompt appear. Hit the corresponding button, and Myers will instantly pick them up by the throat and kill them. This death prompt itself can actually be used to Michael's advantage. If a survivor has endurance active, the kill prompt will not appear. Wait for the kill prompt to appear and the survivor survivor can be knocked down or killed, whatever situation suits you better. If you knock a survivor down and stand above them, you will also see the kill prompt and you can proceed to mori them. You can pull a survivor out of a locker, drop them, and mori them. There are times when you need a survivor dead, and there are several times a survivor will have decisive strike, is on a pallet, a flashlight person is nearby. There's a lot of variables that the base kit mori cuts out of the equation to guarantee that Myers can continue his pressure and get him closer to a victory. Also, it has more aura than putting a survivor on a hook. Of course, in order to get to the fun mode, Myers has to stalk to get there. Let's go into detail as to when are the best moments to stalk and the nuances of being better at it. First off, when stalking, Myers stalks faster when he's not moving, making it accurate to the film. If you stand there and aura farm, you will have a 5-second stalk. But if you're fidgeting around like a nervous Nancy, your stalking will be slowed down. That doesn't mean you should never move and stalk, it mostly means you want to get good at stopping and going. Survivors will often move behind cover, so quickly moving to be able to see them again, stopping movement to gain faster stalk, rinse and repeat. Now, when should you stalk as Myers? This is one of my most asked questions when people are getting to learn Myers. Very easy rule of thumb that I follow when approaching a survivor. Take their surroundings into account, and if you actually have a good angle to stalk them from. If there is no easy angle to stalk a survivor from, simply sneak up with stalker mode. Get real close, switch to pursuer mode, and then hit them. The reason you switch to pursuer mode right before is to give yourself the longer lunge and faster movement in case there's a pallet or window nearby. It gives you a better chance at getting the hit before they make it there. After getting a hit, make sure to switch back to stalker mode and stalk them as they run away. Remember, distance doesn't decide if you stalk faster. They can be the bare minimum of right in front of your face or the maximum of 32 meters away. It doesn't make a difference. So don't just wrap around the corner and stalk them 2 feet away. Hitting them means they now have to make a decision. If they decide to not heal, they'll be easy prey for Mr. Stealth Killer Myers later. If they decide to heal up, it'll use up more of their time. Either way, it's a win-win. You can also stalk them when they're running away, so you still get stalk, so you might as well hit them. If you decide not to hit them and stalk instead, they can just run to a different gen, no care in the world. Stalking is also a great thing to do in lower loops, especially ones in which you have a survivor cornered, meaning they either have to just run out of there and get hit, or let Myers fully stalk them, giving Myers evil incarnate. While stalking, Myers also loses all collision, meaning you can't trap survivors in corners while stalking, but this also means survivors can't body block you while you can still stalk. This is very good to have when chasing a survivor you want in particular and another one gets in your way. You simply hold the stalk button and phase through them. I find the most common use of this is at the hook. Oftentimes I want to go for the survivor that just saved the other. However, when a survivor just gets pulled off the hook, they gain the endurance effect for 15 seconds and can take a hit. If I don't already have my stalk fully charged, I'll get it about 3/4 of the way there so I can phase through the survivor that got rescued. Charge up my meter and insta down the rescuer. A stalking trick that can be done if you have a nice little hiding spot while stalking a survivor, you can stalk the survivor and as soon as you hit the halfway point, hide yourself, give the survivor enough time to have rotated the camera about 3 seconds. After doing so, continue stalking. Myers has an abundance of add-ons that are good for his kit and offer different playstyles. I'm going to start with the add-ons I consider strong and then get into the add-ons that aren't as great. Vanity Mirror. What might be Michael's strongest add-on in the game, after Evil Incarnate ends, Myers sees the auras of all survivors for 4 seconds. If you use the perk Lethal Pursuer from Nemesis, this can be extended for 2 more seconds. An incredibly powerful add-on that just gives Myers information so he knows where to go next. As a killer with no mobility options, this helps tremendously. It helps him get stalk back for his next Evil Incarnate. It helps him save lots of time, which is a very big deal for killer. Lock of Hair. The Lock of Hair allows Myers to cut off Evil Incarnate whenever Myers wants, taking him back to Stalker mode and retaining half of his stalk. Well, I consider this add-on to be good on its own, allowing Myers to have the freedom of returning to stealth whenever he needs to, and get back to Evil Incarnate quicker. It really shines when paired with Vanity Mirror, giving Myers wall hacks whenever he desires, rather than just waiting for it to end. Hairbrush. When an evil incarnate, the first pallet break is 50% faster. While this may not sound too great at first since it's only the first pallet break, when combined with perks like Brutal Strength, this add-on essentially just ensures that the survivor will just die unless they have a pallet right next to them. J. Myers Memorial, a personal favorite of mine. When an evil incarnate, pick up survivors 40% faster. This add-on saves the Myers about 8 seconds, which is a sixth of evil incarnate time, while also guaranteeing the downs that you get, making it much harder for pallet saves, flashlights, or any other shenanigans. Glass Fragment, an add-on that increases the slaughter strike speed by 5% and only increasing the charge time by 10%. This add-on makes lots of loops that weren't playable with slaughter strike now playable. 5% might not sound like a lot, but it really does come in clutch. It's also stackable with haste perks, meaning Myers can get insanely nutty speeds with his slaughter strike. Judith's Journal, an add-on that increases stalking by 40% only on the obsession. A very simple but effective add-on, allowing Myers to get back to evil incarnate incredibly fast. This pairs amazingly well with obsession builds. It'll feel like you never have to fight to get back to evil incarnate. Dead Rabbit. The shape's terror radius in pursuer mode decreases by 25%, but increases its terror radius by 25% when in evil incarnate mode. There's a lot of different combos that can be done with Dead Rabbit to increase its effect, whether that's making Myers have the tiniest terror radius ever, or by giving him an absolutely massive one in evil incarnate. Very simple, but very versatile add-on. Jewelry Box. Increases stalking speed by 30%, but reduces the range of stalking to 16 meters. This is a great add-on for more aggressive brute force Michaels. When paired with Judith's Journal and Obsession builds, the amount of stalking needed is nearly 2.5 seconds. It's pretty fun to watch the meter go up so quickly. Of course, the range is a downside, so it's at its most effective with aggressive in-the-face builds. Tombstone Piece. When activating Evil Incarnate, the shape loses his terror radius for 20 seconds. This is a really fun add-on to mess around with, and when played smartly, gets very easy downs, especially since people generally expect Myers to have a terror radius in Evil Incarnate. It catches a lot of people off guard. One of the more fun add-ons for sure. Hairbow increases Michael's Evil Incarnate time by 20 seconds, but adds a second of stalking to achieve Evil Incarnate. A nice, solid add-on with very little downside. Pairs well with faster stalking add-ons. Mirror Shard increases the shape's lunge by 0.25 seconds, increases the charge time of the shape's lunge by 25%. This add-on is a bit of a double-edged sword. His lunge isn't going to be as useful in the open, but it makes nearly every single loop playable. Similar to Reflective Fragment, but even more so. It can have some really fun uses.
I think with all of our play with your food and all that stuff, I'm pretty sure we can mind game.
Judith's Tombstone. Every time a survivor is hooked in Evil Incarnate mode, the shape's evil meter will reset back to full. It reduces Michael's Evil Incarnate time to 40 seconds. This add-on with the right build can work really well and be lots of fun, but the 40 seconds can limit Myers quite a bit. It can be devastating with the right build, but I have found that using Judith's Journal in an Obsession build gives a similar, stronger, and more reliable effect. Scratched Mirror, allowing the shape to see through walls when stalking and seeing the auras of survivors within 32 meters. The shape is stuck in Stalker mode, a very fun add-on to mess with to catch survivors off guard and give the scare of their life. When combined with Memorial Flower, the shape can be 110% while using Scratch Mirror. A very fun add-on to play around with. Memorial Flower increases the shape's movement speed in Stalker mode to 110%. This add-on is mostly really only great when combining it with Scratch Mirror. Otherwise, you have the option to just switch to Pursuer mode at will to move faster, and switching back to Stalker mode when you know you're close to a survivor. Fragrant Tuft of Hair. The shape can no longer use Slaughter Strike. Instead, his M1 ability insta-down survivors and has a longer lunge in Evil Incarnate. This add-on opens up the ability for Myers to use a lot of perks he couldn't before, such as Surge or Coup de Grace. Since his downs will be coming from an M1 attack rather than an M2 attack, an M1 attack just being a basic attack and an M2 attack being stuff like Leatherface's Chainsaw, or in this case, Michael's Slaughter Strike ability. Now, the downside to using this add-on is you don't get to mind game loops with Michael's Slaughter Strike, a very powerful tool Michael would normally have. You also don't get to instantly break pallets in Evil Incarnate mode with Slaughter Strike. It is much easier to use if you're finding lots of frustration with using the Slaughter Strike, but I really would take the time to learn the Slaughter Strike, especially since the camera moves exactly like a normal lunge now. It's not very difficult to use, even on controller. Boyfriend's Memo. Increase the stalking distance by 8 meters. This gives base Myers a 40 meter stalking distance, which is great and will be felt on certain maps, but will mostly not come into play. 32 meters is usually enough. It does work well with the jewelry box add-on to help negate its weakness. Tacky Earrings. Increase your movement speed while stalking by 20%. While not an amazing add-on, it does actually have some uses. For starters, it makes it much easier to move through body blockers, but it also allows the shape to stalk around loops very easily since he can keep up with survivors much easier, making it harder for them to avoid line of sight blockers and all that. Alright, we are now entering the add-ons that I think have very little use, if not hindering Michael entirely. The first being the blonde strand of hair. This increases pools of blood and scratches in Stalker mode by 100%. This is a really weird add-on because if you are in pursuit of a survivor, you're going to be in pursuer mode. And if they're sneaking around, most of the time they're going to walk away and leave no scratches. Or they'll have Shadow Step. It just won't get lots of use. Reflective Fragment. Slaughtering Strike is no longer insta-down. It adds 20 seconds onto Evil Incarnate's timer whenever you get a hit. This add-on sucks. It just outright nerfs Myers. You can do Mimi builds with it, but it really doesn't work well. You'll hit a survivor, they'll use Sprint Burst to run to a pallet and use up all your time. By far Michael's worst add-on. One of the most fun aspects of Myers is how flexible he is, meaning that nearly any build you'd ever want to run can work on Myers. The reason for this is nearly every single aspect of his kit has a numerical value that changes. His tear radius, vault, lunge, pallet breaking speed, stun duration, movement speed. Every single thing can be tweaked and altered in some way, and a lot of his add-ons can add to this effect. I'll start with 2 beginner builds, and then builds that I personally love to use. The first beginner build I'm going to recommend is what I would use if I had all of my teachable perks taken from me, but it does involve a perk that is a bit harder to use for beginners. The build is Scourge Weeping Wounds, Dying Light, Play With Your Food, and Spies from the Shadows. This build is very similar to one that I actually ran about 2 months ago for quite some time before changing it up. The only difference being Oppression or Surge instead of Spies. And if you want more gen slowdown, you can use Deadlock or No Holds Bars, whatever you prefer. But that isn't the perk that's a bit tricky for beginners. That would be Play With Your Food. A bit of an odd perk to use since it takes a bit to recognize how long you need to stick to the obsession. If you don't know how it works, you essentially leave chase with the obsession and gain a token. You can gain 3 tokens. Every token makes the killer 5% faster, so 15% movement speed can be achieved. Every offensive action will remove a token, meaning Myers can be in 3 chases faster. And towards the end of the game, when you can just pick up people and mori them, which doesn't use a stack, you're just freaking towards the end of the game, you're nuts. But a lot of people have the issue of over committing to their obsession to gain all 3 stacks. You don't have to do this in order to make this perk effective. If there's lots of survivors doing plenty of gen progress, then maybe it's better to go for 2 stacks and quickly put on that pressure. To break chase faster, you can walk backwards, quickly walk away from the survivor, and then move back towards them. You can have survivors at the edge of your camera, and you'll eventually lose chase, having them pallet stun you, and then immediately breaking the pallet. All of these things will add to breaking chase. The idea of the build is to gain stacks from the obsession, and then go hook non-obsessions. Every single hook will give Dying Light stacks, which will slow the game down. Myers is incredibly good at locking down an area, and Dying Light helps with this. When combined with Weeping Wounds, gens are going to be at a snail's pace very quickly, and Weeping Wounds gets rid of Dying Light's biggest weakness, the obsession. The slowdown of Dying Light doesn't actually affect the obsession, and on top of that, they heal all survivors faster. But Weeping Wounds will put a bit of a stop to this. If the obsession decides to heal someone off of a Weeping Wounds hook, they're going to be getting a ridiculous amount of slowdown. It also means when you do hook the obsession on a Scourge hook, anyone that attempts to heal the obsession is going to heal them extremely slowly. Spies from the Shadow just helps you catch survivors more frequently and keep your momentum up. It's just constant information. The other build is exactly the same, but swapping play with your food with no holds barred. So the build will be Weeping Wounds, Dying Light, no holds barred, and Spies from the Shadows. I would recommend using Glass Fragment to give Myers a bit more chase potential, but whatever add-ons you run is up to you. Run what you're comfortable with. Same idea with the build. This is just if you don't want to run play with your food. The build I have been running the most recently and what I consider to be my sweat build is Lethal Pursuer, Bamboozle, Pain Res, and Ruin. The add-ons being Vanity Mirror and J. Mars Memorial. A build that never lets up on the survivors from the very start of the match, immediately telling Myers where everyone is and also telling Myers if anyone is near his ruin or if anyone is going for it. Constantly pushing survivors off of gens and getting constant information with Vanity Mirror so Myers can keep them off of gens. I don't like to use the pain res hooks right away. I try to wait a lot of the time before doing so. I typically pain res for their second hook, unless they get ruin out of the way early and they're going through gens quickly. Otherwise, they get a second hook pain res and then a mori. The J. Myers Memorial just ensures that hooking doesn't take too long so I can get back into the action. It also helps ensure that whatever down I get, survivors won't rip away from my hands with a flashlight pallet save or whatever other nefarious means. Bamboozle helps Myers shut down loops quickly and ensures no chase will take too long. A build with a lot of synergy, this is the build I would use if I want to win. An aggressive Myers build, friends till the end, nemesis, furtive chase, play with your food, or batteries included. Add-ons, Judas Journal with Judas Tombstone, or Jewelry Box and J. Myers Memorial. If you want an extremely aggressive, fast Myers, this is the build for you. Every time you hook the obsession, J. Myers will gain haste and undetectable. Judas Journal and Jewelry Box also guarantee that you won't ever be out of Evil Incarnate for long. Giving nearly 2.5 second stocks, the Jewelry Box limitations don't matter as much since Myers will be moving very fast and will cover the distance quickly. Judas Tombstone and J. Myers Memorial is a bit of a sillier combo and in my opinion not quite as effective, but it's still fun to mess around with. The No Pallets build, Brutal Strength, Fire Up, Nemesis, and Friends till the end. Add-ons, Judas Journal, and Hairbrush, another aggressive Myers build that hates pallets with a passion. Judas Journal with Nemesis will ensure you switch obsessions and stalk very fast to get to Evil Incarnate. With Brutal Strength and Hairbrush, pallets will cease to exist and survivors will go down very fast. You then hook the obsession and repeat the process. Scratch Mirror build, Ruin, Play with your food, batteries, and Sloppy Butcher. Add-on Scratch Mirror and Memorial Flower, a very basic Scratch Mirror build that will get the job done. Admittedly, I don't play Scratch Mirror super frequently, but I have gotten quite a bit of success with this build. Keep Myers fast while also applying a decent amount of slowdown. It's a solid build. These are some builds to get you started on your Myers journey, but don't be shy to experiment. As mentioned earlier, one of the most fun parts about Myers is how flexible he is in terms of builds. I hardly use the same build for more than a few weeks before trying something new and having a blast. Go crazy and get creative. Figure out what you want out of Myers. When starting the match, depending on how big the map is, will decide what form you want to start the match with. If there's a lot of ground to cover, switching to Pursuer mode for faster movement, and then once you think a survivor is nearby, turn to Stalker mode to sneak up on them. On indoor or smaller maps, you typically want to stick to Stalker mode for the beginning of the match unless you know survivors are farther away. Once you find your survivors, you have a choice of stalking or hitting them. I always go off of if I have a good angle to stalk them from. If I don't, I hit them and stalk them as they're running away. I don't typically commit to the very first person I hit. I usually just get my stalk and attempt to sneak up on another survivor. Another factor that decides whether or not I stalk a survivor is if they're cornered. Leary's is a great example of this. There are certain areas on edges of maps that are very easy to stalk around. If a survivor stays at the loop, it's an easy Evil Incarnate. If not, switch to pursuer mode and get a hit on them as they're running away. Leeries, of course, is not the only example of this. Basically, any loop that has a shorter wall can be used to corner survivors and gain evil. If I know where multiple survivors are at the start, I like to 99 my stalk and sneak up on another survivor. This strategy has a very high success rate and usually leads to a very easy down. A few reasons for this one: as mentioned before, stalker mode has no terror radius, making it easy to sneak up on people. 2, the only global notification that Myers has is Evil Incarnate being fully ready. The halfway stalking is specific to the survivor that is being stalked, meaning the person farther on the gen has no idea that Myers has Evil Incarnate ready, leaving their guard lower. When hitting a survivor, sometimes they'll stick to a loop nearby. This is where pursuer mode comes into play, using this form to break the pallet. If they're out in the open with no other resources, stick to them and get an easy down. If they have more resources, break chase and find others. Myers is a stealth killer, not a chase killer in his earlier stages at least. But there are some exceptions to this rule. If a survivor is running to a very strong area, particularly with a great window, unless you nearly have Evil Incarnate ready, it really isn't worth chasing them into these areas at all. Get whatever stock you can and find another survivor. On indoor maps, it's not a bad strategy to use stalker mode and get tons of people injured, making it very easy to sneak up on people and down them. Survivors will often run into Myers since he has no terror radius. When to use Evil Incarnate. Evil Incarnate should be used when needing the lunge attack. This means even on injured individuals. Slaughter Strike is useful even if the survivor isn't fully healthy. Of course, when chasing a healthy survivor, Evil Incarnate mode is ideal. Survivors don't have a finite amount of evil. You don't have to worry about running out of it. So using Evil Incarnate frequently is good. An instance in which getting fully up to Evil Incarnate isn't ideal is if survivors are deciding to stay injured. If this is the case, I like to stalk halfway, just in case they decide to heal later, but then switching between stalker and pursuer mode is ideal. Constantly sneaking up on survivors with no terror radius and being able to switch to the more aggressive pursuer mode is great for handling survivors that just want to stay injured. And if they decide to start healing again, or if Evil Incarnate is needed for a loop, it only takes 2.5 seconds of stalk to get right back up there. Myers wants to get survivors into what I like to call the cycle of pain. Evil Incarnate gets used. He insta-downs survivor, they unhook, take time to heal, Myers stalks, and insta-downs them again, but if the survivor decides to not heal, that might be even better for Myers, because of the no terror radius and stalker mode. Myers forces survivors to make a difficult choice between healing and not. Unlike Plague, even if they decide not to heal, Myers has access to his powerful form regardless. So giving Myers more power by not healing usually isn't ideal unless the survivor has Dead Hard. Always be on the lookout for stalking opportunities, using vantage points for stalking, hiding behind corners, get good at navigating the maps behind cover. The less the survivors have a chance of seeing you, the higher chance you'll have of getting it down. And injure or stalking them. Being sneaky is what Myers wants to do. Keep an eye out for opportunities to 99 as well. There's a full 20 seconds before the stalk resets, and even this can be messed with a bit. If Myers doesn't fully 99 his evil meter, he can also just briefly tap it on a survivor to extend this time. If there are other survivors on your path to your true target, you can quickly stalk just a little bit to extend this timer. Or if your target is in sight and hasn't seen you yet, tap the button to ensure you have enough time. This quickly tapping strategy doesn't typically need to be used, since you already should have a route planned and getting to your target within 20 seconds should be no issue, but it is a good thing to keep in mind as something that Michael can do. When approaching unhooks, this stalking till about a quarter of the way is also pretty useful. Oftentimes after an unhook, the survivor that just got unhooked will take a hit for the rescuer because of their endurance status effect. As Myers in stalker mode, he can phase right through the unhooked survivor, finish the stalking on the rescuer, and down them with Evil Incarnate. Or if they're already injured, simply hitting them won't get the job done. Alternatively, if the unhooked survivor is on death hook and decides to take a hit with Evil Incarnate ready, there are a few things that can be done here. For one, hitting them, following them, downing them, and then mourning them to avoid decisive strike, following them and waiting for the kill prompt since that means their endurance is gone, Be wary, if the survivor is making no noise, the survivor most likely has off the record, meaning it'll be a very long time before the survivor can be down or moried. If there is a locker nearby, dedicating time to this survivor is also a bad idea, as they can force a decisive strike. In general, it's a very bad idea for death hook survivors, though, to get greedy against Myers. Always try and keep survivors guessing where you'll be next. Survivors often see the chase mechanic happen and they think they're safe, a prime time to break off and catch another survivor off guard with stalker mode. Look for opportunities to break chase and spread pressure. Myers is a killer that is heavily rewarded for knowing where survivors are and where they are going to be, which is unfortunately not a skill I can teach. Having this intuition is something that will be gathered from lots of playtime. When to break from chase, when not to break from chase. Observing survivor habits is just something that is gonna take time. Where they feel safe, where they like to look. Playing survivor and getting good at the role can help you understand what survivors like to do as well. This can be especially helpful in figuring out where survivors typically like to look. For example, let's say an ace is working on a gen, and they saw you chase a Meg towards main building. You know ace is going to be looking towards main building, so you break off chase with Meg, with evil incarnate nearly primed and ready. You sneak around the edge of the map, sneaking up on ace from behind, and before he knows it, he's dead. A small tidbit to also keep in mind, there isn't really a transitional phase for Myers when he's going from form to form. What I mean by this is when you activate Evil Incarnate, Myers instantly gains his larger terror radius. It doesn't gradually increase to his bigger terror radius. The same is true for Stalker mode, losing his terror radius. It is important to note that there is a bit of a transition for the red stain to be lost, but it instantly gets gained when going from Stalker to Pursuer. Using all three forms to Michael's advantage is what's going to separate good Michaels from great Michaels. All three forms have a purpose and should not be ignored, keeping them on their toes. Don't just mindlessly always stalk to Evil Incarnate and just bash every pallet down. While an effective strategy, it's not the most effective. Don't settle for just being effective. Be devious, be cunning, be Evil Incarnate. That's all I have for my Myers guide. I hope it was helpful. If it did help you out, please consider subscribing for more Myers gameplay. That will also help you on your journey to being a better Myers. Liking the video is also greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for watching. Now go spread terror in the fog.